Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Russell. When my fiancée snapped at me in front of her friends, loud enough for everyone at the table to hear, that I couldn't satisfy her sexually and could barely provide for her financially, something in me finally broke. In that single moment, 3 years of ignored red flags and brushed off warnings snapped into focus. I realized I had been planning a future with a woman who saw me not as a partner, but as a service, a resource, a tool. Sabrina and I had been together for 3 years, engaged for 8 months, when she publicly humiliated me. That night, I decided I needed to do something about her behavior. I just didn't expect the chain of events that followed. I'm a senior consultant for a multinational firm based in Chicago. The role pays extremely well, but it comes at a cost. Long hours, constant travel, and high-pressure deadlines. 60 to 70-hour work weeks are normal. I would spend 1 week in New York, the next in Dallas, then jump to the West Coast for another project. My job revolves around complicated operations, corporate restructuring, and fixing problems that companies can't fix themselves. Through my 20s, that career was my entire focus. I climbed the ladder fast, earned respect, and reached a level of financial security that most people my age were still working toward. But my personal life paid the price. I dated occasionally, but nothing stuck. I was always too busy, too tired, or too distracted to build anything meaningful. By 29, the success felt hollow. I had money, reputation, and stability, but no romantic connection, no real partnership, nothing beyond work. Then I met Sabrina. I was 29, she was 27. A colleague introduced us because they both know each other well. Sabrina was stunning, model-level looks, perfect social presence, always flawlessly styled. She walked into rooms as if she owned them, and people noticed. She worked in marketing for a fashion company, which came with glamorous events, brand launches, and an expensive lifestyle. I was immediately drawn to her. She made me feel lucky, like someone at her level. Choosing me meant I had finally arrived. At first, she was warm, affectionate, and engaging. She held my arm in public and told me she appreciated how thoughtful I was. She loved the dinners I planned, the trips I took her on, and the convenience and comfort I could provide. At the time, I mistook that appreciation for genuine love. I told myself she was the reward for all the sacrifices I'd made. The missing piece that proved the long nights and endless flights had been worth it. My friends didn't buy it. From the start, they pointed out small things. My best friend didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me straight. The relationship looked one-sided. He said I was doing all the giving, all the adjusting, all the emotional heavy lifting. I brushed them off while rationalizing to myself that they didn't understand her. I believed she had a different way of expressing affection. I told myself real relationships required patience and compromise. I often saw my friends' concerns come from jealousy or overprotectiveness, not from anything real. 3 years into the relationship, I proposed. I bought an expensive ring that took a significant portion of my take-home pay, planned a detailed proposal at an upscale restaurant, and Sabrina said yes with excitement. She uploaded engagement photos everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, even Twitter. Her friends flooded the comments with praise. It looked like a victory for her, a moment she wanted everyone to witness. Then came the wedding planning. That's when the accurate scale of her expectations came to light. She became consumed with every detail. Costs didn't matter. Practicality didn't matter, only image. She insisted on a destination wedding in Santorini. White cliffs, blue domes, the kind of scenery that dominates luxury wedding blogs. She wanted drone footage, a private villa, and a ceremony timed for the perfect sunset. She wanted a wedding that wasn't just memorable, it needed to be enviable. I tried to raise concerns. Destination weddings were expensive beyond reason. Flights, accommodations, the venue, international vendors. All of it added up fast. But Sabrina dismissed every hesitation. This was her dream, she said. This was the wedding she had imagined since childhood. And we had the money. So why was I being difficult? Against my better judgment, I agreed. Since it was a one-day event, I saw it as an investment in our future. That if a destination wedding made her happy, then it meant something. That this was normal for couples with our income level. I began paying deposit after deposit. The venue alone costs more than some people spend on a car. Flights for the immediate family and us. Bridesmaid dresses, rental villas, pre-wedding photo shoots. Thousands turned into tens of thousands. Each payment made me more uncomfortable. Each time, Sabrina reassured me that this was standard for weddings of this level, and that we were not wasting money when we were creating memories. I believed her. 3 months before the wedding, Sabrina's closest friend bought a luxury Range Rover SUV. It was a high-end model with all the newest features. Sabrina's friend posted about it nonstop. Photos of the dashboard, videos of the test drive, captions about the leather seats, the panoramic roof, the dream car moment. It filled Sabrina's feed every day. Almost immediately, Sabrina's attitude toward her own car flipped. She drove a 2-year-old BMW sedan, a clean, reliable vehicle in excellent condition. Nothing fancy, but certainly not a problem. It still smelled new, and had never had a single mechanical issue aside from its oil and filter changes. It was more than enough for everyday driving. But once her friend got her Range Rover, Sabrina began calling her car trash. She complained that it was embarrassing, said it made her look cheap, and insisted people would assume I didn't care about her if that was the car she arrived in. She constantly compared it to her friend's SUV, almost as if the sedan suddenly became a symbol of how she felt I valued her. When we were together, she brought it up every chance she got. She said she deserved better, and pointed out how her friend's boyfriend must have helped her get a luxury vehicle. She framed it as a reflection on me, as if my fiancé driving a normal, modest car made me look careless or unloving. The complaints eventually turned into a demand. Sabrina told me directly that she wanted a new car, specifically a luxury SUV like her friend's, or something just as expensive. She liked it before the wedding, because she didn't want to show up to bridal events, dress fittings, or the ceremony in what she now called an embarrassing car. I explained the financial situation calmly. I was already stretched paying for the Santorini wedding, the flights, the resort, the venue, the catering, the photographer, the pre-wedding events. The whole destination ceremony required a massive amount of money and planning. Buying a high-end vehicle on top of that would mean taking on serious debt. And her car wasn't old, broken, or unsafe. It was in perfect condition and only 2 years old. There was absolutely no practical reason to replace it. She didn't argue openly right then, but her entire behavior changed overnight. She went cold. She answered texts with short, blunt replies. She acted irritated during conversations. She canceled plans for vague reasons. She became passive-aggressive about everything. Tone, timing, even small comments. It was clear she was punishing me for not instantly saying yes to the luxury SUV she wanted. After several days of cold treatment from Sabrina, I suggested we have dinner at her favorite restaurant. I thought a calm evening together might reset the tension. Maybe we could talk, clear the air, and get back on track. She agreed, though she didn't look enthusiastic. I left work that evening exhausted from a long day, but genuinely hopeful. I wanted the dinner to smooth over the argument about the car and restore some normalcy. I was ready to put in the effort if it meant we could reconnect. When I arrived at the restaurant, I was surprised to see Sabrina already seated, not alone, but with 2 of her closest friends. One of the friends was the one who had bought the SUV, and the other was a regular in her social circle. They were chatting and sipping cocktails before I stepped in. I paused, confused. We had discussed this as dinner for just the 2 of us. But when Sabrina saw me, she smiled and told me her friends had spent the entire day helping her with wedding planning, so she thought they deserved dinner too. She said it casually, as though I should have simply known they would be joining us. I didn't want to start another argument in public. I greeted them politely, sat down, and chose not to question the sudden change. No point appearing petty when I was trying to fix things. The dinner began with the usual light conversation. At least it was civil. Then Sabrina steered the conversation back to wedding planning. But this time she wasn't reviewing what we had already agreed on. She was presenting entirely new upgrades. More expensive decor, a larger floral package, additional lighting features, a complete photography expansion, and even a premium bar upgrade. She spoke as if these decisions were already approved. I felt my stomach tighten. We had finalized the venue package months ago, after weeks of discussion. Everything had been settled. These sudden upgrades added thousands to an already heavy budget, costs I had already committed to covering. I calmly asked what happened to the original plan. Why were we changing things that had already been finalized? I kept my tone even, careful, not confrontational. The change in her expression was immediate. Sabrina's face stiffened. Her friends went quiet. The temperature at the table shifted. She snapped at me and accused me of being stingy. Said I never cared about her happiness. Accused me of wanting a cheap wedding. Her voice kept rising, feeding off her own anger, as if she needed an audience. I tried to stay controlled. I reminded her of everything I had already committed to, financially and otherwise. I told her we could talk through it calmly, that this wasn't about being stingy, it was about being responsible. She didn't let me finish before saying the sentence that ended the relationship. I guess she was trying to say something that would hurt me, as she claimed I can't even satisfy her, let alone provide for her. The words came out with so much resentment that the entire section of the restaurant went silent. Her friends stared at their plates, mortified. In one public moment, Sabrina declared that I was both sexually and financially inadequate. She erased 3 years of a relationship and 8 months of engagement with one humiliation. She knew exactly what she was doing, and she didn't care. Something inside me shifted. Every excuse I had made for her behavior, every red flag I had ignored, every time I convinced myself that this was love, it all aligned into one undeniable truth. I sat still for a moment, letting the reality settle. Then I exhaled, slow and steady, and raised a hand to signal the waiter. When he approached, I quietly told him I'd like to pay for my portion only. Just what I had ordered and consumed. Nothing else. He seemed unsure, but nodded and took my card. I signed the receipt. Then I stood up. I didn't look at Sabrina or her friends. I simply walked toward the exit. Behind me, Sabrina's voice trembled as she asked, "Where are you going?" I paused at the doorway, turned just enough to look at her, and said one thing, "Away from you." Then I walked out of the restaurant, leaving her in the silence she created. I got in my car and drove home. The entire ride felt like a strange mix of sadness. I was grieving the relationship I thought I had, the version of us I had built in my mind. But underneath the sadness was relief. On the way home, my mind kept replaying every red flag I had ignored over the last 3 years. Every sign had been right in front of me. I had just refused to acknowledge it. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the truth was obvious. I had been in love with her beauty and with the idea of having someone like her. I hadn't been in love with her character. I had looked past her disrespect and selfishness because she was attractive, and because having her made me feel successful. That realization hit harder than I expected. I walked inside and sat on the couch, still in my work clothes. I just sat there in the quiet, letting everything settle. Whatever attachment I had left was gone. The humiliation at the restaurant had snapped the last thread holding the relationship together. Hours went by. I passed out while still sitting when the doorbell suddenly started ringing. When I opened the door, Sabrina jumped into the house. She had been crying, looking more panicked than remorseful. She jumped straight into apologies. Said she didn't mean anything she said, as she was stressed about wedding planning. She claimed that I embarrassed her by walking out, and I needed to understand the pressure she was under. She threw every excuse she had at me, each one carefully designed to make this my fault, that I was too sensitive, too emotional, too unforgiving. I said nothing. I let her talk until she ran out of lines. When she finally stopped, I answered calmly, "There's no need for your apology. I'm done. The wedding is off." Everything about her face changed. The crying stopped instantly. She froze, like she couldn't process the words. Then she started bargaining. First, she reminded me that the wedding was already booked, that deposits were paid, that her parents would be furious, that it didn't make sense to throw everything away over one argument. She said we could fix it if I acted reasonably. I answered, "You threw it away at the restaurant." Then I told her she needed to leave my house. The conversation was over. The engagement was finished, and there was nothing left to discuss. Sabrina didn't move. She grabbed my arm and kept begging. She said we had been together 3 years. She said she loved me. She said everyone makes mistakes. She asked how I could just walk away like this. I stayed calm. I didn't yell or argue further. I simply repeated that she needed to leave. My voice was steady to show that my decision was final. Then her phone rang. She stepped outside to answer it, telling me she'd be right back. The second she crossed the front door, I closed and locked the door. Then I took my phone, deleted her number, and blocked her everywhere. Through the door, I could hear her voice, muffled but desperate. "Please don't do this. I'm sorry. Just talk to me. Please open the door." I didn't respond. I turned off the remaining lights, walked to my bedroom, and left her outside in the dark. Eventually, she gave up. About 30 minutes later, I heard her car start and drive away. The silence that followed felt heavy. I woke up the next morning feeling drained. The pressure of maintaining that relationship, of constantly trying to meet Sabrina's endless demands, was gone, but the grief remained. Not grief for her, but for the 3 years I'd invested and the future I once believed we were building. Losing that illusion hurt more than losing the woman herself. As I sat there, replaying everything, I realized how much this experience had taught me. I learned that love should never feel like a debt you're endlessly trying to repay. That respect is the foundation of a relationship, not an optional detail. That physical beauty can blind you long enough to ignore the truth about someone's character. And that I'd saved myself just in time from a marriage that would have crushed me. I made a vow to myself. Never again confuse entitlement with affection. Never again ignore obvious red flags because someone is attractive. And never again allow myself to be publicly humiliated by someone who claims to love me. There are lessons in situations like this, and I'm willing to acknowledge them. I learned that public humiliation exposes what private conversations hide. Sabrina's comments at that restaurant weren't sudden. They were the true feelings she had carried for a long time. The fact that she felt comfortable expressing that contempt in front of strangers showed exactly how low her regard for me had become. The mask didn't slip, it fell off completely. I learned that my friends' warnings deserved more respect than I gave them. My best friend and others had seen exactly what I had refused to see, a one-sided relationship built on imbalance. Their concerns weren't jealousy or overprotectiveness. They were accurate observations I had dismissed because I didn't want to accept the truth. I learned that no amount of spending can create genuine love. The destination wedding I planned, the lifestyle I gave her, the constant gifts, none of it made her value me. To her, those things were the bare minimum, not acts of commitment. Trying to buy her affection was pointless because real love isn't a transaction. I learned that walking away at the first clear sign of disrespect is necessary. There was no need to analyze, argue, or seek her side of the story. A public announcement of my supposed inadequacy was reason enough to end the engagement immediately. Some words cross a line that can never be uncrossed. But the most important lesson was simple. Being alone is far better than being with someone who looks at you with contempt. The relief I felt soon after ending the engagement was the clearest sign that I had already been unhappy for a long time. I had spent so much effort trying to keep the relationship alive that I didn't realize how miserable it had made me. The practical aftermath was messy, but it was nothing I couldn't handle. I had to cancel every part of the Santorini wedding. The venue, the catering, the photographer, the flights, the hotel blocks, everything. Most of it was non-refundable. I lost somewhere between $20,000 and $30,000 in deposits and fees. It stung, but it was still a small price to pay for the disaster I avoided. I saw it as an expensive lesson in seeing people clearly and valuing myself. Better to lose money than lose years of my life to the wrong person. Sabrina didn't accept the breakup. She rotated through every method she could think of to reestablish contact. When I blocked her number, she texted me from friends' phones. When I ignored the texts, she switched to email. When that didn't work, she started appearing at places she knew I visited, my gym, my favorite coffee shop, certain restaurants, pretending it was a coincidence. She tried to create moments where I'd be forced to talk to her. I didn't give an inch. I maintained absolute boundaries. I didn't respond to a single message. If she showed up somewhere, I walked out immediately. I told our mutual friends clearly. I wanted no communication, no negotiation, and no reconciliation. She responded by trying to flip our shared social circle against me. She told people I had overreacted to one comment, and that I was being cruel by refusing to speak to her. She claimed she'd apologized and that I was holding a childish grudge. Some friends believed her version. They told me that relationships require forgiveness, that 3 years together deserved more effort, that ending everything so fast was immature. They looked at the length of the relationship, not its quality. But others, especially my best friend, who had warned me about Sabrina's personality since the beginning, were fully supportive. They said I did exactly what I needed to do. That Sabrina had finally shown the side of herself she kept hidden. That instant walk away was a sign of self-respect, not impulsiveness. I lost a few friendships over the breakup. People who sided with Sabrina or who thought I should tolerate public humiliation to keep the peace. If someone couldn't understand why being mocked by my fiancé in front of an entire restaurant ended the engagement, then they didn't understand me at all. Even Sabrina's family tried to intervene. Her mother called, saying Sabrina was heartbroken and had simply made a mistake under stress. She talked about how both families had been looking forward to the wedding, how everything could be fixed if I just talked things out. She pushed guilt, tradition, and emotion, all the usual tools. I stayed polite but firm. I thanked her for reaching out and acknowledged that the situation was painful, but I made it clear that the decision was final. There was nothing to discuss or reconsider. The social fallout lasted a few months. I saw Sabrina occasionally, but I kept my distance, nodded if necessary, but never engaged. I don't know what happened to her after that. And I don't feel anything about it. She's living according to her values. I'm living according to mine. I still think about that evening at the restaurant. One moment destroyed 3 years of effort and 8 months of wedding planning. But that same moment also saved me from a lifetime of emotional exhaustion, constant performance, and the feeling of never being enough. It freed me from a marriage built on appearances and quiet contempt disguised as love. Thank you for watching.